When you ask someone about their favorite horror movies, they'll most likely say A Nightmare on Elm Street, Halloween, or Scream. While two of these films are some of the most iconic slashers of all time, Scream stands out by being a game changer. It became a cultural phenomenon forever, and paved way for more movies than you'd actually think. Today, I'll talk about arguably one of my favorite horror movies of all time, Scream, and its major impact on the film industry at the time of its release. One night, after seeing a news story about the Gainesville Ripper, Kevin Williamson became concerned about intruders upon finding an open window in the house where he was staying. This inspired him to write a short story called Scary Movie. The short story was about a young woman who is harassed on the phone and then gets attacked by a masked killer. Little did he know that this short story would later become a big success and make history in the horror genre. Due to financial struggles at the time, and with the lack of interest to buy his script to teaching Miss Stingle, Kevin focused on the development on a full-fledged script based on his short story. And over the course of 3 days, he not only wrote the entire script, but he also wrote outlines for potential sequels. In the year 1995, the script was successfully picked up by Miramax after a bidding war between major film companies like Universal and Paramount. Williamson agreed on a $400,000 bid with a contract for 2 sequels. Director Wes Craven read the script before he became involved in the production and considered convincing the studio to buy it for him to direct. However, by the time Craven read the script, it had already been sold. When Miramax was looking for a director for the film, Wes Craven declined the offer due to the scheduling conflicts he was facing and was considering to distance himself from the horror genre. When production of the film he was developing at the time collapsed, Wes Craven was looking for a project. He finally settled with Bob Weinstein to develop Scary Movie. Scary Movie, not to be confused with the film that parodied Scream, was renamed to Scream after the Weinstein brothers were inspired by Michael Jackson's song Scream. Wes Craven hated the name Scream at first, but later changed his mind on it after Scream hit theaters. Kevin Williamson listened to the soundtrack for Halloween for inspiration while writing the script. Melissa Joan Hart, Brittany Murphy, Tori Spelling, and Drew Barrymore auditioned for the role of Sidney Prescott before it ultimately went to Neve Campbell. Drew Barrymore insisted that if she played Casey Becker, then it would make the audience think anything could happen. Joker actor Joaquin Phoenix turned down the role of Billy Loomis. Even David Arquette was considered for Billy Loomis, but he turned it down in favor for playing Dewey. Freddie Prinze Jr. auditioned for the role of Stu. Breckin Meyer and Jason Lee auditioned for Randy before it ultimately went to Jamie Kennedy. The use of caller ID increased more than threefold after the release of this film. For the penetrating effect of knives, the production used collapsible blades to prevent injury. Ghostface's robe was originally going to be white, but it was changed in fear of being compared to you-know-who. Writer Kevin Williamson was required to reduce some of the gore in the script. The scene where Principal Himbry gets killed by Ghostface was added at the request of the producers, who noticed that there were 30 pages without a murder occurring. The killer was described as just a masked killer, with no description at all, and it was up to Wes Craven and the production crew to create the killer's design. The infamous Ghostface mask was actually part of a series of masks by Filmworld, called Fantastic Faces. The mask was called the Peanut-Eyed Ghost, and it was sold during the Halloween season before the Scream movies ever existed. The mask was discovered by producer Marianne Madalena, while location scouting for the film Shadow of a Doubt. They didn't have the rights for the mask, so the effects team created custom masks similar to the Funworld one. Wes Craven was dissatisfied with the designs, and Funworld and Dimension Films reached an agreement, so they can use the original Ghostface mask in the movies. However, the custom masks were used for the scenes where Principal Himbry and Casey Becker get killed because they were filmed before the agreement. When they were location scouting, producers had Santa Rosa High School in mind to use as high school in the film. The school board insisted on seeing the script and backed out due to the violence against the teenagers and the fictional principal in the film. Local newspapers and parents criticized the project and even compared the violence to an actual murder of a teenager that took place in the area 3 years prior. This sparked a 3-hour debate a day after the filming of the project began, and they ended up using the Sonoma Community Center. In the end credits, you can see no thanks whatsoever to the Santa Rosa High School board. Bob Weinstein originally hated the costume for Ghostface, believing it was not scary until he saw it used in action. The last scene in Stu's house, labeled Scene 118, was considered the most difficult to shoot as it took place entirely in one location, yet featured the individual stories and deaths of multiple characters. Actors spent weeks undertaking intense emotional and physical scenes while coated in fake blood and wounds. After they wrapped up, the cast and crew were given "I Survived Scene 118" t-shirts. Wes Craven was forced to tone down the movie in order to avoid an NC-17 rating, which would be crucial for the movie's box office performance. The death scenes of Steve Orth and Tatum had to be shortened in length as they were considered too brutal. Even the stabbing scene between Billy and Stu was found problematic by the MPAA, but after further talks with Bob Weinstein and Wes Craven, the film was thereafter given an R rating. Scream was released on December 20th, 1996. It's really odd considering it's the Christmas period where theaters show only seasonal and family films. Weinstein argued that this facts in the film's favor, as horror fans had nothing interesting to watch during the holidays. On the opening weekend, it earned only $6 million, rendering the film a failure, but in the following weeks, the film's box office takings will grow significantly, leading to the total gross of over $100 million. The movie received high critical praise as well, grabbing multiple awards such as an MTV Best Movie Award in 1997. Whether it was the star power surrounding the film or the wittiness of the film, this movie's success remains a mystery. Most likely, it will be the latter considering the clever and fresh way of presenting a horror movie. This movie has everything. Deconstruction of horror movie tropes and cliches, self-awareness, whodunit, and witty humor around it. The success of Scream led to the revival of several genres in the film industry, including slasher, teen movies, and of course, parody movies. Giving life to genres that have faded to obscurity due to fatigue and becoming unpopular with moviegoers is pretty remarkable. As a result of that, we've had movies that were both good and bizarre. It's odd how Scary Movie, that can be considered a parody of a parody because let's face it, Scream really does parody horror movies in a clever way without shoving slapstick down our throats. Then you have something like Shriek, if you don't know what I did last Friday the 13th, which you don't know what it's supposed to be. Is it a ripoff of a parody of a parody, or a parody of a parody of a parody? I've seen both parodies, and in some scenes, the worst one's actually better than the best one. Scary Movie really focuses on slapstick and being over the top with almost any scene there is. Shriek, however, has some scenes that really made me laugh, I'll admit. Even though it's basically beating a dead horse with a scene that can't be coincidentally ripped off of Scary Movie, it has some Scream parody scenes done way better. I can't really show scenes from any of these movies because, let's face it, the copyright strikes I'll probably face will be harsh. So, if you're curious and like this type of humor, give the film a watch. Now, back to Scream, its popularity was off the charts that it even spawned multiple sequels and a TV show on MTV. A year after Scream's release, Scream 2 came out. The script was leaked on the internet during production, and the sequel was subjected to serious rewrites. Despite the troubles the production faced, the film was well received and some people even consider it better than the original. Scream 3, however, is where the franchise really jumped the shark. The Deus Ex Machina is one of the many flaws this film has. Even though I like the reveal of Roman being the killer, I can't deny that it didn't feel like a Scream movie at all. This time, real tragedy forced the script to be altered entirely. Scream 3 was originally going to have Stu Macher return and have him lead a cult of Ghostface killers in high schools nationwide. This concept was later used in the TV show The Following, written by Scream screenwriter Kevin Williamson. Scream 4, however, is an improvement over the third one by a wide margin. Jill is actually one of my favorite Ghostface killers and it has some of the most brutal death scenes in the franchise. Unfortunately, due to the poor performance at the box office and the sudden passing of Wes Craven in 2015, there are no chances we're going to see a Scream 5. I've never really seen the TV show about Scream, but from what I've heard, it's not a bad modern day take on the idea of Scream, even though it didn't have an actual ghost face until the third season came out. It's crazy how a short story about a home invasion would later become one of the most influential horror movies in history. This begs the question, will there ever be a horror movie that goes to such heights as Scream? With the recent horror releases these days, only time will tell. I'm Kalayan, and see you in the next video, and happy Halloween.